the City of Bettendorf's Committee of the Whole meeting. Today's Monday, June 2nd, 2025. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Thank you all for joining us. We start with our presentation. Decker, you wanted to introduce John and the rest of the folks and your work with the community survey results relative to the new police station.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. With us tonight is John Mahan. John has been our team leader from Bray all the way through this process for the last year, seems like. I think it is a year. And also Scott Gerard, who is the project manager for Community Perceptions. Scott is with us remotely. We're excited to share with you the survey results that we completed the last couple weeks. And John, do you have anything you want to start? Or you want to hand over to Scott?
Actually, I'll tee it up for Scott. As you recall, we've been through our master planning effort. This has been a really wonderful opportunity for our team and the city team to work together to strategize the new police department facility for the city. As we've culminated with where we think the project lands in terms of scope and cost, so how the building arranges, how the building looks, what it costs, it's important to go out and get feedback from the constituents of the city, mostly for the fact that there is an ask of whether they would financially support the efforts that would be made for this. You'll probably remember just a few weeks back, we held a couple of community meeting events. Those were actually run in tandem with this survey. Those were well attended. I believe, Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, we had more than 40 members of the public show up across the two events, ask really good questions. Several of you, the council members, were there as well. Those brought good feedback, and that gave us a good sense of where people's heads were at. But the real data is in the numbers that Scott's going to be sharing with you tonight. These are the survey results. These are the things that were filled out online or filled out physically and mailed in. Scott has that summary, so we're excited to share. So Scott, I'm going to let you run with the ball now.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate that great introduction. And thank you to the City of Bettendorf team for bringing us in on this project. We enjoyed working with it. So let me bring up the slides here. All right. So here we are on June 2nd.
This isn't the slide that we're seeing on our screens yet.
You're not seeing the slideshow yet?
Open burning.
Nope.
Wait for.
We got to push a button here somewhere, and Jeff's not here. He's watching his kid.
I mean, I can get it on there.
Angie says she'll get it. Put it all in the paper.
I think there's a button. There's a square thing there to push to get to this.
Angie may be trying to figure out how to get the FaceTime screen up.
Here she comes.
You have the hard copies in front of you.
I'm gonna have to unplug it.
Unplug it.
It's not on
It's
yours.
not on the council's monitors. That's where we're having an issue.
It's on the screen in front, and it's in your hard copy, so.
I like this one anyway.
Oh, boy.
Do you want me to scroll that along?
No, I'll just sit here. That's okay. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Thank you, Ange.
Thank you, Angie.
So
All right, you should be clear to go, Scott.
Set to go. All right, sounds good. Thank you all for the on-site tech support. So here we are on June 2nd. So this is just a little key for the types of information you're going to see throughout the presentation here. We've got background information. A lot of that will look familiar. It's a reminder of what was in the survey. We'll go through the survey and respondent information to talk about who took the survey, the results and analysis, and then time at the end for wrap up and questions. Little reminder about us, we've been doing this sort of work since 2002, and we've helped more than 1,000 communities navigate strategic planning and referendum planning processes. So your survey had a May 5th deadline, so just under a month ago. We got nearly 2,500 responses, 2,497, which was good for a 17.8% response rate. And our usual is in the mid-teens, I would say, so you're a little above our average right there. Given that number of respondents, we've got a plus or minus 2.00% margin of error. That's just a good number to keep in mind as we go through the survey, and that's just completely based on the number of respondents there. So the age demographics of your respondents, the biggest group taking your survey was 65 plus group in your city. Those folks are reliable voters, so we do like to see a strong response rate from there. We also had solid response rates from the next three age groups, and the 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 groups are smaller numbers, and that's typical with these surveys, so no surprises there for us. We asked on the survey if someone owns a property in Bettendorf, what type. 99% of respondents were residential property owners. 1% of respondents were commercial property owners. We also asked if respondents' primary residence was in the city to make sure that folks would be able to vote on a ballot measure if there were a ballot measure. As you can see, 98% of respondents did have a primary residence in the city. We had 1%, very small number, saying no, and another few respondents who were not sure if their primary residence was in the city. It's always 1 to 2%.
Very interesting.
We also asked which voting ward folks lived in. So as you can see, you had the most respondents from Ward 5 and then Ward 4. And then Ward 3, Ward 1, and Ward 2 all were in the teens or above. Finally, we asked a communication question. How do you like to receive city information? 60% of respondents like emails and 52% like the city website. Those were the two main ways that surpassed 50%. But you also had folks who like social media, the Alert Iowa system, council meetings like the one we're at tonight, and then 10% of respondents have another way that they'd like to receive city information.
Scott, just a quick question there. If
Absolutely.
I recall, you could check all of those boxes. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, that was a check all that applied. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying. So this is a reminder of the challenges that were presented, this slide and the next slide, that were presented as to why the city was asking its residents about a new police station. So we highlighted the increasing calls for service, the location, safety, security, and usefulness of the current facility, and then we also provided some context with neighboring communities and their police facilities. We then shared the proposed solution, which is that the city owns land that is centrally located. The new police station will be built at that location, and we highlighted a few of the features there and shared the estimated cost of $27 million. We shared how much that would impact taxes in the city for folks if a $27 million bond referendum were approved. And then we asked them, would you support a $27 million bond referendum to pay for the new police station? Among respondents, 59% said they definitely or probably would support that bond referendum. You had 32% saying they probably or definitely would not support that bond referendum, and the remaining 9% responded undecided. We dove a little into that by ward, and what you can see here is that your strongest support came from wards 4 and 5. and wards 1, 2, and 3 fell slightly below that 60% threshold for approval. Now, this is where it's good to remember that plus or minus 2% margin of error, because the overall support, for example, in Ward 2, if that margin of error falls on the positive side, it does surpass the 60% threshold.
Scott,
Yeah.
this is Greg Jager. Just a quick question on the various percentages. If wards 4 and 5 seem to have the greatest amount of support for a proposed referendum, is there any discussion internally about the fact that those are the wards where the police station movement would provide the greatest response in terms of service?
I think that's certainly a potential factor in that, in those numbers for sure. That's a pretty logical thread to follow.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So that is the main piece of data, because we really wanted to hone in on that percentage of support. But I'd be happy to take further questions on the data or be a part of the discussions here.
Any questions? Yes, Greg.
Again, thank you, Your Honor. Scott, you broke down the yeses and probably by ward, but you didn't on the no, definitely, or probably by ward.
Sure.
Is it, if it's yes, is mostly 4 and 5, is no mostly 1 and 2?
So at the bottom of that slide, the definitely and probably no's, and sorry, I should have mentioned this while I was on the slide. Wards 1 and 3 had the highest percentages of definitely and probably no at 37% and 36% respectively.
Okay, so 1 is 37, 3 is 32,
36.
36. And
Yeah.
32 was which ward?
Ward 2.
That's Ward 2.
Oh, so it's just straight down?
Yep.
I got you,
Drop,
sorry.
color-coded.
I'm an old man, I miss this stuff. Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott? All right. Thank you
John,
very
you have
much.
any-
John, you have anything to close?
So the data is very telling. Your threshold is 60% plus 1. So this is very encouraging that without any real development in the community, meaning engagement, communication, people already see the merits of a potential move. By having the ward data, which I think your question about the location is very valid, right? So it tells us where the most communication might be beneficial. So those individuals in wards 1, 2, and 3 might need a little bit more communication as to what might change and how things would still remain beneficial for them. And then for those other wards, 5 and 4, continuing to develop communication with those individuals so they understand what that support means and how beneficial that is for the city as a whole. So the next steps moving forward would be development of those communication efforts.
Any questions on that? Greg Adamson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was on the department here for 31 years. I think people need to, something maybe to emphasize is the new police station proposal is near maintenance, gas, all that stuff is, we already own the land, that's important. But it's not like it's a fire station and everybody leaves from there. The police department has beats, and officers are assigned to those beats, and that's where they work unless they're called out for emergencies or things like that. So the people down in 1, 2, and 3 we need to make sure that they understand that there's going to be police officers there, even if the police station moves from here to farther north. Just a point.
I think that's really good information.
Anything else? Yes, Jerry.
Thank you, Honor. My question is, did we get any written comments from these people as to why they voted the way they did?
We did receive written comment, as you all would have noticed in that there's some open-ended questions that were filled out.
Yep.
We are working on an FAQ response just to help communicate against some of those efforts. There's a portion of it that the education is just going to be about how cities are able to finance things. So there's a question about, why do I have to pay for a referendum? That is because there's a little bit of development that people need as to why you have to use a referendum as a vehicle for a facility like this. The other questions we're working on understanding the best ways to communicate against them. There's a couple of themes we will work on what that response is and share that with you further so that you're familiar with how we're receiving and addressing those questions.
And there's a team from Bettendorf that's been working with John and his group and Scott and his group, so they've got input at the table. They're working on it as well. Jeff spearheading most of that. Yes, Nick?
Thank you, Your Honor. So, given this is my first referendum on council, help me understand. So, do you provide the strategy then for the outreaches for Ward 1 through 3? And then it's upon the city to execute, or how does that process work?
It's a little bit different than that, in that the city itself can only provide informational communication, and our team will help provide that communication effort. It seems like we will have 2 different kinds of messaging, perhaps 3 different kinds. We'll help target what that is and how that gets broadcast. Our team will work with the city on that, and then that will cover kind of the city's obligation of communication and information as far as the referendum. If there is any other kind of support effort, we can work with that group as well.
We intend for that to happen. I think when we were successful with the library and the referendums that you see that bring success have a lot of volunteers behind it that might provide some messaging and some door knocking and some financial support, because we can't support that type of effort. And so that would probably be a committee, and we're working on those next steps with our partners.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much.
And then we'll have more information from our attorney as we get closer. So I think we can provide basic factual information.
Sure.
And then as of a cutoff date, which is when we schedule the referendum, because we haven't even scheduled it yet. This was the first piece of information that says to us, ooh, we should be successful if we do it right.
Right.
Yeah. But then, Chris, if you want to jump in, you can.
Yeah, no, I think you summarized it very well, Mr. Mayor. I think it's, once the matter is placed on the ballot, that's when the use of public funds for advocacy is no longer allowable. And so until we get to that point, that's a critical date. I think now our messaging is still informational. Certainly at that date, it can only be informational. But our intention is to just get the information out so the voters can make an informed decision. And to the extent there is advocacy, that will be done by a volunteer committee that is being put together presently.
And if you have people who you think would be good, let us know.
Got it.
Send those names to Jeff, Deck, or me, somebody.
Got it.
Yes, Greg, Jacob.
Further question for Chris, or maybe Chris can help us a little bit on this. I seem to recall there was a Supreme Court case on a city administrator using a personal account to advocate for, conduct, or respond to concerns on city municipal matters. And I don't recall how that came out, but does the council have to walk a line between using their personal Facebook page to start commenting on city business and making advocacy on municipal matters versus the communication coming via official sites, through our communications personnel, that kind of thing?
Certainly. I mean, this is where it's, there are some really interesting cases in the U.S. Supreme Court case that recently dealt with social media and those kind of combined social media platforms that an elected official might have. The question is really public funds. That's the clear the Iowa statutes on the use of public funds for advocacy is pretty clear. I think the social media aspect brings another maybe complication to it. I think, elected officials have First Amendment rights to advocate personally, but I think it gets really tricky when you are using certainly a city-issued phone for advocacy would be something that we would not want to do.
So if I were going to use Nextdoor, I had to do it on my home computer and not my city cell phone.
Right, and I think when you are using, Nextdoor, or you're commenting on Nextdoor or on Facebook, we can talk about some disclaimers as well. That would be helpful, I think, for as we get into this. And I think there will be more discussion on that. I think it's kind of like even with the advocacy aspect of it, like when you put this information out is important. I think also we wanted to wait to have those specific discussions with council until we got closer to the date in which the measure is on the ballot. But those are, certainly very important questions and ones that we will delve into more.
Thank you.
Yes, anything else on this item? Yes, Decker.
So, Your Honor, tonight was the point of the bringing this forward was to make sure that you understood that there is support in the community based on the information that we have in the survey. And the next logical step then would be for you to put this on the ballot, and we think that'll happen in July is the time frame that we need to meet with the auditor's office to make sure we can get it on timely so that that question will be on the ballot in November. And then to the point that the mayor made, we've been working with John and have been already identifying folks who either have expressed interest or who we believe would probably support this to serve on a volunteer committee to drive the referendum process where we won't be able to drive it. But that committee would do that. So to the mayor's point, if you have individuals that you think would be interested in supporting that, we would appreciate you giving us those names so that they could be asked to be part of that grouping. And that group would probably be established in the next 30 days, and then they'll start their work. And they would probably most likely try to obtain funding to support that and get out and do that. And we would begin to only act in information roles in front of Rotary or in front of a church, just to say, here's the project, kind of like what we did at the waterfront. Here's the location, here's the cost, all those sorts of things. And then others can advocate for it. So I think we're right in line with where John gave us a time frame when we first started. We're right on time. This was the time that we had said we would do the survey. And now the next step is getting it on the ballot and creating the citizens committee to drive it forward.
Anything else? Yes, Greg Adamson.
Just a couple comments. I would really appreciate Chris doing that as far as letting us know what we can and can't do. As I've already been thinking about, I want to make a presentation to my church. I can do that, I assume, as a private citizen and not as a council person. And so I'd like to know what I just don't want to
We'll set you up.
make a mistake.
And
yeah.
we'll provide you,
Yeah.
there's other people in your church that are going to be advocates for this, I'm sure.
right,
So
right.
they can advocate and you can provide the factual, that we put together with our team so that everybody's singing from the same sheet of music and we know it's just plain factual information.
Right. And a second comment, I've been voting for a long time in several referendums, and sometimes you read especially state and federal, you read the referendum, you can't understand if voting yes is supporting it or voting yes is not supporting it. So we want to make sure that it's pretty plain what the vote means. That's all. Thank you, Your Honor.
Good idea. All right, anything else? Well, thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, Scott. We appreciate you working with our team here at City Hall, and thanks to all our folks who are working with you. We We appreciate you.
Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too, Scott. Okay, we have removed the futsal court from consideration as items to appear 11. Let's move to items to appear 12. This is with regard to the burning ordinance that we have talked about, and Chief State has brought us up to speed. Chief, you have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Council, for your consideration on our proposed changes of open burning ordinance. As you recall from goal session meetings in the fall, one of your priorities were to look at our amendments, make sure they're all updated. This hasn't been updated for several years, and I think we can improve the open burning and recreational burning within the city of Bettendorf, adding some guidelines to it, and then adjusting that ordinance in small fashion. So, and if you have any questions, please go ahead and stop and ask. I'll do my best to answer them. This was the last burn complaint we ran. It was on May 12th, and you can see it's rather large in size, and obviously air quality is not good in that area. When we look at the burn ordinance, the two things we should focus on are the air quality issues and then fire safety. So with the new ordinance, I think we can control some of this. And it also provides a little bit of guidance for our firefighters and police officers that show up on scene. This is the red line version, which is very hard to read. So I took the liberty of breaking it down. And this highlighted some sections for our current burn ordinance. If you look at section 2, which are your open fires for cooking, heating, recreation, this is your recreational fires. And it says, it shall be allowed when such fire is not composed in whole or part or substantial part of leaves. Smoke is generated from leaves and wet lumber and things like that. So we're trying to get rid of that. So you're going to see that removed in the new ordinance. The other two key points are no fire shall continue beyond 10 o'clock. We're going to put definite timeframes in there for people. I had a gentleman ask me if he started at midnight, could he run it until 10 o'clock the next day? That obviously wasn't the intent for the code, but we're going to make sure it gets cleared up. And then as far as the consecutive day period, I think that was put in there due to that people were using recreational burns to get rid of all their yard waste. So we're going to remove that as well. The third part that you see is the permit fees. And that is going to pretty much stay the same, but there's a few modifications with it, and I'll show you on the next slide. This is the new proposed open burning ordinance. You can see at the top, it has, they're permitted as long as it's in compliance with fire department guidelines, and I have those in your packet as well, and we'll hit the key highlights in those. Those are what determines the size and the hours and competent person on scene. And other things that make it for a safe environment. We changed that recreational fires to, instead of having leaves in it, that you can just burn dry wood or commercial fireplace logs. Once again, air quality is the biggest complaint we get when people are burning, and it's because they're burning leaves or shrubbery or grass or construction materials or anything that shouldn't be in your recreational fire. Talked about the hours for recreational fire are going to be between 9 and 11. And then the highlighted section right below that is we're going to run the permit burn hours where you can burn a little bit of landscape waste between the hours of 9 and 5. We just don't want to be out there at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night trying to chase fires with a bigger diameter pile. We'll get into the guidelines. Once again, there's a lot of information here. I'm just going to hit the highlights. This is for your open burning permit guidelines. We encourage the public to always use our Public Works department. They do it free 2 weeks in the spring, 6 weeks in the fall. So we encourage everybody to use that to pick up landscape waste. And then we talk about how you apply for a burn permit. And in bold, you see, construction materials, garbage, and other man-made products shall not be burned at any time. We do come across that quite a bit. Once again, those products are the ones that have all the smoke to it, and it's not healthy for air quality. A couple more key components in that, 15 miles per hour is the wind. If you get down to number 5, you look at the diameter of the pile that people can burn. We reduce that down to 8 feet in diameter. We've been on burn piles that are 40 feet in diameter, and it's just not a safe thing to do because you can't control the embers. And then we have distances in there as well that you can see away from structures, and those can be adjusted if their diameter gets a little bit smaller. We currently do this, that only 2 permits will be allowed a year for a residential to burn yard waste. So they can't do it every day. They can't do it every weekend. We're trying to limit that. And then the few items at the bottom are just for more enforcement and compliance. And we do follow all burn bans by the state, and sometimes Scott County, we impose those as well. Run through this. Recreational fire guidelines. Once again, the key point is brush, leaves, landscape waste, construction materials are prohibited when you're doing recreational burns. That's not what a recreational burn's designed for. And then diameter, or distances, excuse me, away from structures. And people with screens on top of their fire pits and stuff can get a little bit closer. We'll follow the manufacturer's guidelines for those. Once again, you need a competent person on site with some type of extinguishment equipment, and the hours are listed there as well. We did add in, because it wasn't mentioned in our last ordinance, conventional fuel materials. If you look at all your outdoor fire pits, you look at all of your heaters, fireplaces that are solely run on propane or natural gas, those have no limitations for hours of use because they don't have any health hazard threats. They don't have any fire threats as long as they're used per manufacturer's specifications. I know that seems like a lot of material, and I ran through it pretty quick. I would ask if we have any questions or concerns.
Anybody? Greg Adamson?
Thank you, Aaron. Hey, Chief, thank you so much. This is much improved. Something just came up, got me thinking about this new ordinance coming up. My wife and I were out for a walk, and all of a sudden, large amounts of smoke going across 53rd. We thought a car was on fire because it had stopped. And I think he just stopped to see what was burning. And I think somebody was burning off vegetation or something, and they caught their fence on fire, their wooden fence on fire.
Yeah.
Fire department came, 2 trucks, one was called off, I think. But I guess my question is, when somebody does something like that, is there a penalty to that?
So there could be, but when you get into prescribed burns, there's a few of them that happen throughout the city, and as a city, we do it up by the golf course. You have to be qualified in order to do that. You have to have certain certifications in order to do prescribed burns, and it has to be done in a controlled manner. So could there be fines? Absolutely. We tend not to do that. We'd rather inform our public, educate them a little bit so we don't have those issues. The other concern with bigger fires is they do it for development. The developer wants to take all the trees down, put them in a pile and burn them. That's in Iowa Administrative Code as well. And they can't do that unless they're a quarter mile away from any other structure. So.
I wasn't advocating that they get a ticket, but technically they
Yes, technically, sure.
could get,
Absolutely.
if it happens again or whatever.
Yeah. And we keep these.
They caught their own fence on fire, so I guess that's penalty.
We keep these reports in our CAD system so we can see habitual offenders and address them at that point.
Thank you, Aaron.
You bet. Anybody else? All right, thank you, Chief, and thank you for bringing us up to speed before tonight. Everybody's had an opportunity to talk to you, ask questions, and give you their input, so we appreciate that. That is also on the items to appear list, so we don't need a motion. Let's move to our consent agenda item. The agenda item we're going to look at is consent agenda E. This is flood buyout program, and for that, we welcome our Community Development Director, Mr. Mark Hunt. Mark, thank you for being here. You have the floor.
Thanks, Your Honor. Just 1 second while I pull my slides up. Tonight, we just have an appeal to an appraisal, and I'll go into that. But I thought since I was going to talk about the buyout program, I'd just give you a quick update. I got about 3 or 4 slides for you. Some background, as you know, we are currently funded for 100% federal state funds, so no local match. We applied for this grant in November of 2021. We did appraisals prior to the award of the grant. We had to see what our budget would be, so we appraised roughly 18 properties for potential buyout, mainly confined between Crestview Drive and Parkway. So this block here, it runs a little bit northeast. The grant was awarded in September, so our appraisals are now 4 years old. Anytime during the life of the grant, a person can voluntarily come forward and sell their property to the city. As the appraisals get older, people tend to want to appeal the appraised value, and we'll talk about that in a second. And the grant admin plan, of course, allows for that. We've had 2 or 3 of these occur over the life of the grant. We purchased 36 homes and raised them, creating roughly 5 acres of open space. Current acquisition is kind of winding down for this round. I probably got 1 or 2 more to do. They're in strategic locations. They're really close to where we've been trying to kind of square off some area. But before I show you that, I want you to just see the map and, kind of note the floodplain. The darker blue is the floodplain area, and the green lines represent parcels that we've purchased and taken down. And you're really starting to see some density, if you will, opposite of density perhaps, open space in these green areas. And if you remember the last few days or last few weeks, we've been working with Bettendorf Middle School on this corner with that demonstration project. I did throw a slide in there on that for you.
Mark, on that slide, can you show us where the house is that we're talking about?
Absolutely. It's actually hard to see on this slide because it's going to be under this logo right here, but it's near this corner. So if you look at where the Hawthorne Hills 8th edition is, that's kind of where it's at. But I've got a close-up view for you as well.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And just remember, we have a future use for this property that we're working on now. Bettendorf Middle School, MRCTI, Ducks Unlimited are all helping us kind of come up with a plan for that. We do have a $100,000 hazard mitigation grant program application in. We're waiting to see if we get funding on that through the state of Iowa. But that would help us really build out the area into a water quality, flood resiliency, and passive recreational space. And so Bettendorf Middle School is kind of leading the charge, if you will, with this project that the kids have been working on since November last year, November last year. So they're out in the cold planting, and now they're back this spring planting some of the trees and things like that. So just again, working towards what that future will be, not just buying things and tearing them down. Mr. Jager, this will answer your question better. So here's the house in question with the appeal that's come to this council. So it's neighboring, 2 or 3 other already bought out properties. It's of course on Parkway Drive, which is adjacent to our Duck Creek Parkway. So it kind of meets all our categories for location. And I would note that the 2021 appraisal was $133,000. The 2025 appraised value, which was paid for by the owner, so they had to go out and take this cost themselves, brought it to $182,500. The assessor has it at $199,100. So we're essentially below assessed value. This is still an optional program. Tonight you could make this vote, or tomorrow you could make this vote. It's still totally optional if the person wants to come forward and sell to the city, but they did see this as being the next step for them. I would be happy to answer questions.
Questions for Mark?
More
Yeah,
of just a
Nick.
comment. Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. This one sort of stood out to me when I was looking at it over the weekend, and the home values even across the city have increased tremendously since 21, right? And so I know that this is mostly federal dollars, if I understand that correctly, right? No city obligation to it.
correct.
So just seeing that, just seeing the increases here is good and hopefully beneficial for these homeowners to make a decision that benefits them. So I appreciate the work that you've been doing on this.
Thank you, Alderman.
Anybody else? All right, this is marked for consent E. I'd like to entertain a motion that it remains so for tomorrow night's agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take it up as consent E. Let's take a look at the remaining consent agenda items. Any particular council member wish to discuss any of those? Council member Jager.
Thank you, Your Honor. On a couple of items, I have some comments, and one I'm going to ask that it be moved to regular agenda. Taking first consent D, this is part of that $2.1 million package of improvements from where the DOT work is going to be ending through up to what would be our new bridge walkway. As part of the $2.1 million, the information that was provided to the council in the last meeting, part of the costs are for a monument sign to go up in this area as people come off the interstate. Personally, I think that that's an unneeded expenditure insofar as within an eighth of a mile, we're going to have a rather massive public improvement with the city's logo lighted, with the bridge arches lighted. I think people who come off that interchange are fairly quickly going to know they're in the city of Bettendorf. I think a monument sign is redundant. This isn't the right part for us to discuss that, but I wanted to give the council a heads up on my thought process insofar as maybe it saves us 50 grand or 75 grand or something. But when it comes time for the construction, I would really ask staff to consider whether a monument sign for that area is really necessary. That's just a comment, Your Honor. On consent B, which is the Baker-Tilly contract, I would make a motion to move that to regular agenda for separate vote so that I can vote no on it. I don't expect that any other council member will share my thoughts, but I want to explain. First off, this is a contract that's over budget. The budget was 15 grand, the ask is 25 grand. Philosophically, I have trouble with the ready tapping of reserve funds for what happens to be otherwise normal operational expenditures. It seems to me that every council meeting, we are finding staff asking us to tap reserve funds for expenditures. In the last couple meetings back, trucks. I understand trucks cost more money, but as a routine process, I don't like to see us tapping those reserves. So that causes me some concern. The last rate study was just 2.5 years ago. It seems to me that even with unforeseen or unanticipated things, doing repeated rate studies at that frequency and having consultants be hired to do that is not an optimum use of tax dollars. And then finally, Your Honor, on this particular point, I have a tendency to trust staff and its expertise. I'm not sure we need to have experts come in and tell us what our rates need to be when our staff does that routinely for us. If staff makes a mistake, the nice thing about the city is that we're controlling the rates. If staff, when it all gets said and done, says, oh, the rate's 10 cents too high, glory be, we can adjust the rates. If staff says the rates are too low, we can adjust the rates. And there's nothing in state code or our city code that requires us to adjust rates for the 1st of April of each year. So as we go through this process, as we get time to issue bonds and we go get the preliminary information, and our consultants at that time will give us their estimate of what they think we're going to get in interest rate cost on the issuance of debt. I'm perfectly okay with adjusting the rates at that time in response to the facts that we receive. So, Your Honor, for those 3 reasons, and I mean no disrespect to staff, I trust staff, I think they're very smart people. But for those 3 reasons, I don't think this is the right thing for the city to do at this time, and I would like to vote no on this matter.
So you're going to
I'll make a motion to move to regular agenda.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move consent B to the regular agenda. Anybody else on consent? Yes, Nick.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, did you have another one, Greg?
I defer to.
Okay, Nick, go ahead. We'll go
Yeah,
back
I
to
just had
Greg.
an observation. I think it was last meeting, Brian, you had provided a list with the breakdown of the cost of the 2 million. Now in the packet, it's 2.1 million. So help me understand where that additional $100,000 is coming from, because when it was first brought to us, it was only at $2 million.
Yeah, the information that we provided you at last meeting, we were estimating the recreational trail being $500,000. The lighting, the conduit, and everything like that, because we're responsible for all of the street lighting on Middle Road, not the bridge structure itself or the ramps. and then all the landscaping that we're responsible for. So that totals $2 million. So these are just estimates, and this project will be bid in July. And then once we have those hard numbers, Nick, we'll actually dial in the estimate. If it's over budget, one of the things too that we talked about was to restrict the length of the recreational trail that feeds to the north, just go up to a certain point, but we would cut it off at that $2 million mark.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And then adding on to Councilmember Jager's initial question, do we know the cost, or could you provide the cost of what that monument sign will be? Yeah, I don't know if you have it readily available, but I know it was looped into, I think, a $750,000 budget on the breakdown.
Yeah, I don't have that cost, but I can
Okay.
get that to you for tomorrow night.
Yep, thank you.
Back to you, Greg, sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. Question on consent H and I, which are the civil service lists for captain and lieutenant in the police department. Since there are two lists in the captains, I can expect over the length of time that this list exists, that this is going to be our new command staff. And I wanted to make sure the chief is comfortable with those people being the potential command staff for the department. I did have a question. First, let me back up. First, assuming we approve the civil service lists and we have a vacancy in a position, is it the normal procedure then for staff simply to fill the position? So if we have a captain position open, one of the names from that list will become the new captain. If we have two captains open, both names would get listed. If we have three captains open, we put those two up and then we ask for a new list. So is that the understanding of how it works? Okay. So I want to make sure the chief is comfortable with those names, because this is the command staff and these are the guys who are going to be leading the organization for a very long period of time. This may be the only opportunity to make this discussion. But I also wanted to know about the composition of our police force. In terms of male and female, I know we have some female officers. I know we've given awards to female officers relatively recently. But on the list for lieutenant and captain, there are no females. And I wondered if that was the person or people didn't apply, whether they didn't meet minimum qualifications, whether the Civil Service Commission determined that they did not meet minimum qualifications. I would hope that in the city, as we go through this, there's opportunity for everybody in the force. And I'm just asking the question, I'm not trying to judge it in any way. Chief?
Chief Scott?
Yep, thank you. Good questions. One, very comfortable with the captain's list. Very good people, no concerns there whatsoever. To test for captain, to test for lieutenant, it follows the rank structure. So we currently do not have any sergeants that are female at this time. And to be eligible for lieutenant, you needed to be a sergeant. To be eligible for captain, you need to be a lieutenant. We don't have any lieutenants that are female at this time. So as we continue to advance from the bottom up, I believe we'll see that continue to change with the new hirings. And we have 2 females at the academy right now. We continue to diversify our workforce, and I think you'll see more of that in the future. We're just not there at this current time.
Okay, so it's purely just a question of minimum requirements for the classification that the applicants don't meet at this time.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir. The only other point I have on this, and this is more a philosophical point as opposed to anything else. We're going to get a new police station, and it's going to be a wonderful structure, and it's going to serve the needs of the city for a very long time. But it's also going to be very isolating for the department. Today, over the course of the last 50, 60 years, the police department was right next door to other departments. And you could meet the people, you could interact with the people, you could build a camaraderie. You lose some of that when you become your own silo. And in these days, we saw it just this last week with 2 of our officers being wounded in response to a call. It's easy to fall into a we versus them mentality. And the way I've tried to explain it to others is the concept of OIB. Some people will recognize that, some won't. OIB is in only in Bettendorf, where you have certain things. We have officers that have not merely been civil, but have also been friendly as they perform their day-to-day duties. And I want to make sure that as we go down this path of getting a new building and the potential isolation of the department, that we're making sure that the department ethos is one of not only civility, but also just general politeness with the residents of the city. When I was in law school, I was told that most time people will only come in contact with the justice system in two ways. One is through traffic court, and the other is through divorce. And so the way the police department interacts with our populace shapes their viewpoint on how the system works. And I think it's very important that the officers understand, and that's a part of what their work ethic would be. Having said all of that, again, I'm just asking, are you comfortable with these lists that are being put forward?
I am.
Thank you, sir. That's not a cross-examination, I guarantee you. Thank you, Your Honor. That's the only questions I had.
Any other questions or thoughts on consent? All right, can I entertain a motion to approve all consent except item B, which will be added to the regular agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take up all but consent B on the consent agenda. I don't have anything to add to tomorrow night's agenda, other than to thank our fire department for their great work at Wallace's, like we thanked our police department for their great work the other night. Yes, Greg Adamson, do you have something to be added?
Well, I wanted to, once, nothing else on the agenda,
Go right ahead, say what you want to say.
a couple things. We have said, the council, I believe, pretty strongly have said that we think traffic enforcement is an integral part of law enforcement, and I know Chief agrees with that. We had asked for like an update, what's going on with traffic, and I'm not saying that we're pushing for people to get a bunch of tickets, but contacts and, hey, you need to slow down, that kind of thing. I haven't seen, and I know the chief's new, but since Chief Kimball left, we haven't had any kind of information about that. Like to,
We'll put that on the list.
yeah,
Decker's writing it down.
okay. And then my second thing, if I could, Your Honor, we were talking about the study for the sewer rates and stuff like that. I understand that included some possible annexation east of Criswell. And just personally, I question whether or not we need to buy it off. I think it's like 150 acres and $15 million for the, I know that's part of the study, so millions of dollars for the sewer. I don't know that it's more, it would be more streets, and are they up to standard? We have so much land north that's already part of Bettendorf. I guess my question is that something we want to take on strategically? And if I could request that maybe in the future, near future, or next planning meeting or something with Lyle, that we discuss strategically whether that's even the direction that we want to think about annexing, and maybe it is, but I would like to have some additional discussion about that topic.
Jason, do you think tomorrow, now that we've moved B onto the regular agenda, you could at least inform council of the parameters of the study and the reasons that you thought it would be important, specifically the annexation and the I&I and other work we're doing at the waste treatment plant and how that might affect rates moving forward.
Happy to.
Thank you, sir. We'll get you some info.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We stand adjourned. Good work, people.